All right, good evening, everybody. It's Steve of Real Progressives. Tonight, before we get too far into it, I want to tell you that we will be supporting Rohan Gray tomorrow at the Democracy Convention in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He will be on a panel talking about modern monetary theory amongst the conspiracy theorists of the AMI team and the public banking sector. One of our own, Lana Dell, will be out there covering it for us as Rohan breaks it down for the haters. And we'll make sure that you get plenty of coverage of that tomorrow. I believe it'll be tomorrow afternoon, Eastern Standard Time. More information as it comes available. Now, I want to talk to you all about something that most progressives, most Democrats, most lefties in general, most Greens have been adamantly opposed to, and that is school vouchers. Now, the subject of this talk is not really about school vouchers. I'll get to that in a minute. But I'm going to lay forward some basic common complaints that we have about school vouchers, and hopefully it'll bring into focus the larger point that I'm going to make. School vouchers, everybody gets a school voucher. Everybody gets, say, $2,500. Everybody gets $2,500. So what happens when you get to pick the school you're going to go to? What happens when the wealthy get their $2,500 voucher, right? What are they going to do? Well, naturally, the wealthy will take their $2,500 voucher and they'll put it towards some private education. And they will go ahead and be willing to double and triple and quadruple and whatever to pay to get their kids into an elite school, okay? However, the people that were going to school A anyway will still go to school A, or maybe they'll shuffle the chairs on the Titanic and they'll put them in another school that's maybe slightly better, whatever. But the people ultimately will still be in the exact same place. We'll call this status quo. The only difference is the cost of school education is now gone up. And now the people are told, you had your school voucher. If you want to go to a better school, you better find some money to do it. Now, most people advocate against this that have a brain. Most people are anti-school voucher programs because it does absolutely nothing to help kids, because ultimately there's a scarcity issue of seats at the best schools. And so what do? They go back to the normal things. We got to look at performance. We got to look at high achievers. We got to look at various other things. And ultimately, you still keep the kids that are struggling in the struggling school, and it's still underfunded and everything else under that. You have changed absolutely nothing. The difference is you've given the wealthy $2,500 towards the private school that they want to take their kids to. So ultimately, regardless of what I have to actually laugh. I just have to ignore some things here that go across because ultimately people are not getting the point, but that's okay. So then let's take a look at what a basic income guarantee is ultimately. Basic income, right? Everybody across the board gets their $2,000 a month or their $1,500 a month, whatever that amount is, okay? What happens now? Absolutely nothing. It is status quo. It is literally status quo. And since there's no increase in output, there's absolutely no productive anything associated with the money. What you end up with is what we call an inflationary situation. This is truly one of those things where you have a lack of productivity and an increase of funds available, and the lack of production, not the increase of funds, but the lack of production creates an inflationary situation, because now all of a sudden people are competing for scarce resources. They all have the same exact amount of money, and now all of a sudden they're chasing after a scarce resource. This is literally the very definition of inflation, okay? So we talk a lot about these things, and people don't really think them through because they think, oh, that sounds good. I heard somebody on Facebook say, wouldn't it be great to have a UBI? Or I heard some dude on a podcast somewhere say something about, wouldn't it be great for a UBI? The reality is the only thing that really, really is good in this case, if you think about what you're trying to do, is a federal job guarantee, okay? Federal job guarantee pegs the economy to labor. It pegs the economy to a productive output. And I'm not talking about working for the man. I'm not talking about digging holes. I'm not talking about filling holes. I'm talking about local work done at the community level, determined by the community as to what the community values, and then posted for people to apply for those local community jobs that would have a living wage, would have living benefits, and would have a productive output. When I say productive, I'm not talking about twisting ties on a Tootsie Pop that so many people fetishize about the Industrial Revolution, and they think the only work that we can do is work for the man. Sadly, this is what many on the left even think, which is really repulsive. But the reality is that our local communities have been neglected immensely. We have not had enough funds pumped into the economy to support enhancing our local communities. So many of our local communities are living on Spartan, if not non-existent, public purpose spending. Now, by leveraging our economy to a job guarantee, you do several things. First thing you do is eradicate involuntary unemployment. Second thing you do is you peg the economy to labor. So now all businesses that want to hire people out of the job guarantee have to meet or beat the benefit package that comes with a federal job guarantee. Medicare for all, paid family and medical leave, all the things that you want. And again, for those people that are incapable of thinking beyond their Eugene V. Debs world, that can't understand that the public purpose involves not working for the capitalist man, but working for the community and making the community better. For those people that can't get that, I'm sorry, you're probably a lost cause anyway, okay? But for those who can get this and do understand and don't want to see the suicides that come from unemployment, okay? This is not status quo. This is 1,000 times superior to a universal basic income. It doesn't mean you have to take this, so it's a voluntary program. What it does is it ends involuntary unemployment, okay? Now, you want to go ahead and give somebody a basic income, knock yourself out. Knock yourself out. But the reality is it's nothing. It's a giant nothing burger. You want to actually satisfy people and the economy and make it so that the capitalists you supposedly hate can't take advantage of labor anymore. Eradicate joblessness for those who don't want to be jobless. Anybody can move from any state in the country, go anywhere they want, and they will have a job the next day. They don't have to worry about whether they'll be destitute and living in the streets because they can't find work. Far cry different than status quo, isn't it? Far cry different than status quo. And what would that do? Instead of it just being white flight from the inner cities, people of color and others who have been in generational poverty, that have been trapped in horrific situations, left in alternative economies, suddenly have the ability for mobility to leave and go find a more better community that is serving their needs. Now, you want to talk about actually improving the country instead of a race to the bottom. Now, all of a sudden, the states have to compete for residents. Now, all of a sudden, the states have to go ahead and meet the residents' needs. So the Green Party loves local economies and local communities making local decisions. Teabaggers love local economies and local decision making. This seems like one of those win-wins for many of the progressives and the anarchists, you name it. Here is an opportunity to redefine your local community according to the way the people in the local community want it to be led. And it gives people options, it gives people choices, and it allows no one to be destitute. Now, for those people who don't want to do something for their local community, who would rather sit there and play video games or whatever, right? The job guarantee doesn't solve that problem for you. It's not a panacea for people that don't want to help the local community. But for people that do want to help the local community, they could submit a proposal for a job that they wanted to do. So let's say they wanted to be an artist. Let's say they wanted to teach surfing lessons, as Ellis often talks about. Let's say they were asked to collect water samples for the local community to test the streams, lakes, rivers, whatever. These are things that the community can, in fact, pay for by the federal government funding it. This right here is a bona fide way to prevent destitution in the economy. No more involuntary unemployment. This is an incredible thing. For those people who want a UBI after they have eradicated unwanted involuntary unemployment, then you can start worrying about what to do with the 3 or 4 people that are left over. Because the reality is that we could expand Social Security without any problem at all to accommodate those people. Without any problem at all, we could eradicate FICA and expand Social Security to accommodate those who are incapable of working and don't want to work or whatever. But the reality is, if we're trying to make the economy shock-proof, if we're trying to eradicate the destitution and the lack of mobility, folks, the lack of mobility and the lack of opportunity, federal job guarantee is superior on every single level. There's not even a minor level that the UBI touches. It doesn't touch anything. It's status quo. But for some reason, non-econ people that don't understand economics, have an opinion. And you can tell it's the ones championing the UBI. They're the non-econ people out there that feel something. It's a feelings-based idea that doesn't have any merit economically. Now, some people would rather have a job guarantee and a UBI combination. For what reason? I don't know. Because ultimately, if the person wants a UBI and they want to do something like write poetry, they could submit that to their local community. And they could get that approved through their local community. And if their local community doesn't support that, there will be other local communities that would. But the reality is we're out there to solve involuntary unemployment. Most people want a job. Most people want a job. That's just a fact. And based on 45,000 people a year committing suicide due to involuntary unemployment, which the government perpetuates, the job guarantee saves lives. And it is the key anchor to the economy that prevents corporations from taking advantage of people. They now have to meet or beat the entire benefit package and the rate. And guess what the rate is for a job guarantee? Since there is no real proposal right now other than John Conyers' proposal, the proposal we are pushing for is a bona fide living wage. Somewhere in the vicinity, I've heard things as low as $15 an hour, which I don't support, all the way up to $30 an hour, okay? But the bottom line is that ultimately when you eradicate involuntary unemployment, the capitalists can no longer hold destitution over the heads of their employees. This is very important. And going back to the school voucher scenario, think of the school voucher as a UBI and consider that most corporations out there would consider hiring people with a UBI and paying them a much lower salary. It would be an augment to the capitalists one more time. One more time. It would be a way for the capitalists to skimp on paying people. So you need to think this through. I know that it's all the rage by the non-econ people. Non-econ people, say it with me again. Non-econ people, people that do not understand economics. Those non-econ people that say, we got to have a UBI. Those non-econ people don't realize that most of that stuff comes from the helicopter money of Milton Friedman and the libertarian world. Because ultimately, they're looking to eradicate social safety net programs. It's not like they're going to say, here's a UBI, plus you get all these other things. They're looking at a UBI to replace those things. And I'm not saying everybody thinks of it that way, but when you go to put this before committee and people start trying to collaborate on this, one of the key things out there, because this came from the libertarian world, is getting rid of the welfare state. Getting rid of these other programs to support people. Now, for those of you who actually care about the economy and care about people being involuntarily unemployed and committing suicide, I commend you for thinking through the problem deeper than your visceral reaction to just say, UBI sounds good. Wow, that sounds like so good, like totally in good and stuff. This is very, very important because going forward, when you watch, for those of you who suffered through the great financial crisis, the global meltdown that occurred, so many were left destitute. So many lost their entire life savings. And what happens every time these types of things happen? The wealthy, they just hold on to their wealth. And what happens? The little guys lose everything. And then the big guys, once again, swoop in and hire people at a lower wage. They do it every time, every single time. But what happens if they can't do that anymore? What happens if there's already a living wage basement floor that they can't use that leverage on people ever again? What happens when they can't hold a family and their destitution over their head to keep them begging for crumbs? Think about it. Too many people out there that don't understand economics, who just feel things, have feelings, think things, have ideas, but don't think it through to understand the impact on the economy and the impact that would have on other people. They say things. They just say things. The reality is the job guarantee, if we were to actually fight for something meaningful, versus just, yay, we did something, okay? Something well thought out. The entire hiring world would have to recognize a living wage to compete. And by having that living wage, you can guarantee that it is a lock on preventing any kind of price runs, because ultimately, the economy would now be pegged to labor. There is your floor. There is your wage floor. There is your benefit floor. And there is the stability, the honest to God shock absorber to the economy that prevents what most of us see in Fuego. Every time we go through the city, every time we go anywhere and we see people homeless and we see people without jobs, they don't have to worry about all the other things that the regular hiring world does. We now have a federal job guarantee that allows people to survive with dignity. Think about this, folks. Think about the people in Flint, Michigan, all jumping together and leaving and smacking their butt and giving them the finger and saying, fix our water, fix our homes, fix our streets, get us jobs, or we're gone. You want to see some people change? That's the first way to do it. People are no longer stranded in these hellholes. You want to see a revitalization of America from the bottom up, the 99%? A federal job guarantee, my friends. That's the answer. That is the answer. So with that, I'm Steve Grumbine with Real Progressives, hoping you learned something today about status quo, school vouchers, UBI, and a truly superior plan in the federal job guarantee. Have a good night, everybody.